Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Fabita Akro. Let's begin. French-Cameroon's political fault lines are widening, with the country facing an unprecedented moment of division between French-Cameroon and Ambazonia. Opposition leader Issa Tchiroma has declared a national day of mourning, escalating tensions just as Ambazonia's leadership emphatically rejected his authority, highlighting the deepening rift within the nation. Now, this week, prominent human rights lawyer Alice Nkom publicly accepted the role of spokesperson for Tchiroma, whom she hailed as the president-elect of French Cameroon. Her endorsement signals growing momentum for the Francophone opposition, which seeks change after more than 4 decades under President Paul Biya. We see that Tchiroma's call for a nationwide pause in business and administrative activities, coupled with a minute of silence for victims of post-electoral unrest, reflects his attempt to consolidate support amid rising political uncertainty. But the question is, why now? Is it because he feels his right or alleged win were taken away? Yet, in a direct challenge, Ambazonian President Samuel Ikome Sako dismissed Tchiroma's call to halt movement of goods and people between French Cameroons, reiterating that Ambazonia is a sovereign state, not a Cameroonian province. Sako reaffirmed this enforcement of ghost towns, border closures, and strict economic controls, underscoring that Ambazonia's independence struggle remains separate from French Cameroon's internal political dispute. Now, on this story, analysts warn that the growing assertiveness of the Francophone opposition and the Ambazonians' unyielding stance on sovereignty could plunge the country into a period of intensified political confrontation, with far-reaching consequences for national stability, governance, and regional security. Now, with this, we head on to the headlines on Undaunted tonight. Ambazonia violence intensifies. Baptist pastor kidnapped in Jakiri as clergy face rising threat. Tonight on Undaunted, we'll take a look at Project C movement urges Pope not to legitimize disputed election in French Cameroon. Also tonight, Cameroon faces political upheaval as Tchiroma declares a national mourning. Ambazonia rejects authority. Atanga vows penalty for Issa Tchiroma. Also tonight on African Scene, Operation Dudula escalates anti-migrant campaign at South African public clinics. And on the global scene, we'll take a look at activists light up Johannesburg as South Africa urges global action ahead of historic G20 summit. So with these are the major headlines on Undaunted tonight. And with this, we head on to the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. A Baptist pastor has been abducted in the Jakiri area of Ambazonians, according to his family, who say the kidnappers are demanding a 10 million ransom for his release. The pastor's disappearance has sparked concern among local churches and human rights observers, as the identity of his captors remains unknown. In a nation already racked by colonial violence and criminality, the incident further underscores the growing danger facing religious leaders. While it is not yet confirmed who is behind the kidnapping, some sources believe that non-state armed actors likely linked to French Cameroons may be responsible. Such groups have long operated in Ambazonia, sometimes turning to abductions for ransom or to exert influence over communities. The pastor's family has appealed for calm but warned that failure to pay the ransom could have their consequences. Now, see that the abduction comes amid a wave of other attacks targeting clergy in the southern Cameroon's conflict. Pastor Desmond Njo, a respected minister with the Cameroon Baptist Convention, was shot dead recently in Ndu by members of the elite Rapid Intervention Battalion, according to multiple eyewitnesses report. Just days before that killing, Reverend Inter Peter, according to CBC pastor, was also wounded in a nighttime attack on his home by masked gunmen demanding money. The plight of religious leaders in Ambazonia is not new. We keep seeing this in the news. In Batibo, French Cameroons allegedly killed Pastor Christopher Tanjo, a Bible translator and aid worker, after he openly criticized their extortion and intimidation tactics. On the other occasion, Pastor Kilo Elijah was reportedly shot dead by French military forces during an operation in Mfunte, a village in the northwest, highlighting how both sides of the conflict can endanger clergy. So beyond those killed or wounded, kidnappings have become a chilling reality as well in Ambazonia. Human Rights Watch and other observers note that these fighters have abducted hundreds of people, including clergy, students, and humanitarian workers, since the conflict began. The crisis escalated even in recent days. Now we see that this act of violence against religious figures not only deepen fear among local communities, but also undermine trust in both state and non-state actors. The recent pastor kidnapping in Jakiri, Nama, is being closely monitored by church leaders and human rights groups. Many are calling for an urgent and transparent investigation into the network behind such attacks and for stronger protection for religious leaders who are increasingly becoming collateral victims in the broader conflict. Now, this is a sad story right here, and we are bringing the story to your very, very presence this night. But then this will not be analyzed by me alone right here in the studio. I'm here with Barrister Mbeseha, our legal practitioner. Barrister Mbeseha, good evening, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts and your and reactions as regarding this report. It's been an honor having you on the show. I think it's been a while I've had you on the show, and I've been right here tonight and taking on this show tonight to have you speak to us on this report as they keep unfolding. So this is this report with the recent issue of kidnapping, and it feels really sad that clergies, pastors are now victims of this. And what do you think about this? What's your thought? Why are pastors recently now the target for this whole situation of kidnapping and insecurity?
maybe yesterday, was the adoption of some 3 priests somewhere in Dop or somewhere in Bamenda there, where the bishop sent other priests to go and negotiate their arrest. They too were adopted. And then they didn't ask for money, they asked for the bishop himself to come. Those are all religiously targeted things with specific motives. In that instant case, if Dot is not here, the people who took the priests refused to negotiate with any other person. They wanted to sue the bishop. They might have a big message to deliver to the bishop, be it political or religious. That is a different story. But these last few, the last one you mentioned, as I just said, plus the one who was shot and the man missed death, we did analyze that on Tuesday, may be purely economic criminals. And of course, there are so many, especially in the Northwest. Why? They have asked the question many times, where is the government? Where criminality becomes the order of the day, it shows that government has failed, woefully failed. Otherwise, why are they not bringing the people to justice? They are not doing it either deliberately or they are not doing it because they are unable to do it. And I heard you say somewhere during analysis, I did additional protection. Who will provide additional protection for a pastor? His Christians, his followers, his communion takers? What protection will they offer to him? These poor people who are just going to take communion in church, who are going to listen to the Gospels, they don't carry arms. So whether they are trained or they're following a pastor or not, they don't protect him. So the protection of a pastor essentially is within the community because essentially they are peacemaking people. They live in the community, their work is to preach the gospel. The gospel, to the best of our knowledge, which deals with Christianity, is a message of peace. It's a message of love. And so you don't need guns to protect you. Remember, even if it is protection, if you go back to the Bible, if these are pastors following Christ, when they came to arrest Christ, one of his disciples cut off the ear of one of those messengers. And the master, what did he do? He put back the ear. Said, this my gospel is not for violence. Go back with your ear. I have to preach my thing the way I want. And so again, several things can be said about this. But essentially two, economic, which this one looks like, and political, which one of the priests looked like, because they wanted to see the leader of that church, who is called the bishop. Maybe they wanted to deliver a message. I don't know where he has gone there. We don't know where they have delivered their message. But those are two different signals. Over to you.
Barrister Mbeseha, thank you for the in-depth analysis you stated. And you know what's more concerning is the fact that these unknown gunmen are seeking for a whopping 10 million naira for the abductors. And this is really a very serious case of concern right there. And then I like the fact that you just highlighted that it could be even economic and political reasons rather. But then as we move on in the report, we're having this report and still giving us more deeper insight with the level of religion that is being outplayed in Ambazonia. Now we see that the Project C movement has issued an open letter to the Pope ahead of a planned papal visit, urging him not to endorse the fraudulent presidential election in French Cameroun. The movement claimed that the October 12, 2025 election was won by opposition candidate Issa Tchiroma, citing reports from Catholic and independent observers. However, the CPDM-dominated Constitutional Council declared longtime incumbent Paul Biya the winner, despite a reversal of the documented vote tally. The movement argues that the Catholic Church in the Cameroons is aware of the true outcome but has chosen silence, which they label as complicity with injustice. They warn that a papal visit conducted without publicly demanding transparency would provide spiritual legitimacy to an illegitimate government. The group calls on the Pope to confront the country's bishops, release observer evidence, and speak out in defense of truth and democratic values. So this comes to add that the voice of Father Ludovic Labo, who is calling on bishops to tell the Pope the truth. We love the Pope. We want him in the Cameroons, but not now. not to help legitimize an illegitimate government, says Father Ludovic Lado. Now, he emphasized that the Vatican can only act according to what it hears from bishops, M and Nuncio. And if they report that everything is fine, that's what the Pope will believe. The Project C movement frames the situation as a moral crisis rather than a political dispute, stating that the Church cannot serve both truth and lies. They appeal to the Vatican to take a prophetic stance similar to its role in historical demonstration and democratic transitions, saying millions of Cameroonians, especially youth, are watching closely. So now the Bias regime's priority is image over justice and truth. And the movement laments that the church may be complicit in this dirty game of image. Now, this is the content of an open letter addressed to the Pope by the Project C movement on November 18, 2025. Project C was a movement put in place by Cameroonians diaspora to monitor the October 12 presidential election. Barrister Mbeseha, this is the report we are having right here. Do you think that the visit of the Pope would unintentionally legitimize the cry for the fraudulent election? We would say fraudulent, Paul Biya coming into the becoming the president again, in regards to the opposition leader, and with the cry of the people saying this is who they want Tchiroma. So do you think that the Pope, the coming of the Pope, would definitely legitimize what we are seeing? And then what impact will this have on the church and the people, especially those who believe that, oh, these are religious leaders and we believe they should be able to act well?
No, the Pope is a religious leader. But the Pope is a religious leader with a difference. He is also head of state, the Vatican. The Vatican is the only country in the world, it's a country. He has a representative in Yemen, they call it ambassador. And so when the Pope goes out, his mission might be primarily religious, but it's also political. Because there's no political system that functions in a vacuum. If the political system is functioning in a corrupt world, in a defected world, the Pope is bound to take note of that. You've seen all this writing from Project C. You saw that Reverend Father writing an open letter. There's something seriously wrong. You come there right now, you legitimize anything. But is that even what should be the most important concern? I said the president, the Vatican, the Pope, is a very important head of state in the world. This Pope was recently consecrated not too long ago. And during that his consecration, something happened, which had never happened any time, anywhere, which did not happen during that occasion alone. Delegations went to handshake with the Pope, different country delegations. The country delegation of Cameroun was led by Atanga. And he, like any other delegate leader, went to shake hands with the Pope, the newly consecrated Pope. What did Atanga do? Atanga got there and purported to remove an envelope from his bag. We don't know what was the content of the envelope, but we think that it was money, and tried to hand it to the Pope. That was in total defiance of all diplomatic engagements in the world. No other delegation did that. Throughout the whole world, no other delegation has done that. It is corruption. Cameroon has passed the mark, 150% mark. Because nobody has ever attempted to bribe a foreign leader publicly. Publicly, everybody saw it. You and me sitting here in Cameroon, sitting anywhere else in the world, we saw it. Should this send some warning signals to the Vatican? Of course. When you deal with Cameroon, you are dealing with a criminally dangerous country. It took to this level. Atanganji, who claims to be a Catholic, a devout Catholic, would have known that if he wanted to make a gift to the Pope and put it in an envelope, even if it is gold or silver, the Pope will not take it. If you wanted to make a gift to President Paul Biya and put it in an envelope, and then you are trying to hand it to him during a handshake, they will not take. Because who knows what that thing might be? It could be poison gas. But Tanganji tried. He tried. The Pope did not even take it away, but he tried. Then she sent signals to the Vatican that you, Mr. Vatican, this is direct message. This thing didn't pass through your bishops. It came directly from the hands of the minister of the country. If the Pope comes to Cameroon, he would say a mass. The most sacred part of a mass in Catholic doctrine is the communion. Pope will line up there, Atanga will line up there to receive communion. The Pope, the cardinal, whoever is there, cannot deny you the communion. But the shameless stand there, even what we know, that regime is so corrupt. This regime kills people, come to take communion from the hands of the Pope. The Pope will not, but will speak about the church. I think you are saying that the Pope should not venture coming to Cameroon are perfectly right. Project C, which is, I think it is essentially based in the diaspora. Therefore, it is essentially diplomatic. So when they write such a letter to the Pope to oppose the Pope's visit to Cameroon, that should have a big, heavy weight, should be considered seriously. Because in essence, 99% of these people are Cameroonians. 99% of them are outside. 99% of them are well educated. So if you can add Project C to the voice of a Catholic priest, Father Ludwig, to the voice of what some of the bishops have been saying in Cameroon the past 6 months, or the past 1 year, the Pope will be ill-advised if he decides to come to Yaoundé now. And so I think it is important that the Pope realizes that in addition to being, their mission is essentially religious, moral, but they're also playing a political role. And as you have said, there is no justice when you do not point out the wrong. There's no repentance. There's no forgiveness, until you repent. And so Project C is right. The open letter is perfectly in order. The Reverend Father who wrote that letter, which is circulating everywhere in the world, is right. I think that's the moral compass of the Catholic Church. It did not need to come from a bishop. That guy is not a bishop. That priest is not a bishop. But bishops are essentially priests. That's just all. They become a bishop just because you have to perform some administrative duties. You are just a priest. And so this man, the Reverend Father there, is more with some moral compass. Again, I think it will be very, very irreversible for the Vatican to ignore and try to venture into that trip, Camp 2026. Because again, the corruption of Yaoundé has gone beyond boundaries. It has gone beyond international, given what Atanga tried to do publicly in the Vatican itself during the consecration of this very Pope. There must be a time that the Roger will say, no, we don't do that. And again, in the Bible, remember, Christ coming into the temple and driving everybody there who was selling and making money. I said, my father's temple was not meant for your marketing. Drove everybody out and beat them. And so the Vatican should learn to do the same. If they are the followers of Christ, and I think they are. If they are the followers of Christ, they listen. I think they are listening. Over to you.
Thank you, Barrister Mbeseha. That's a solemn admonition right there. It's beautiful that you pictured out the moral compass regarding this and not thinking about the political aspect, even with the level of corruption you just stated right here. And it's not new. It's not new. But then we'll be moving over to the next report that we're having right here. Cameroon's fragile political landscape has entered a new phase of uncertainty following a series of provocative developments involving opposition leader Issa Jakiri, human rights lawyer Alice Nkom, and the leadership of Ambazonia. Earlier this week, Nkom, a prominent lawyer known for her advocacy on human rights, publicly accepted her role as spokesperson for Tchiroma, whom she referred to as the president-elect of Cameroon. Her endorsement signals growing momentum within segment of Francophone opposition, while emphasizing caution to avoid further bloodshed after decades under President Paul Biya's 42-year rule. Now, these orders have been rejected by Ambazonia. The most significant reaction came from Ambazonia following Tchiroma's call for the Ambazonian brothers to come together to halt the movement of goods and people between Cameroon's so-called two regions. Now, in a formal statement, Ambazonian President Samuel Ikome Sako rejected Tchiroma's directive, asserting that Ambazonia is not a Cameroonian region, but a sovereign state with internationally recognized boundaries. He stressed that no Cameroonian political figure has authority to issue operational orders affecting Ambazonia. And he insisted that cross-border cooperation can only occur between sovereign equals after recognition of Ambazonian status and its right to control borders. Pending such recognition, Ambazonia reaffirmed enforcement of its Monday ghost towns, closure of borders with Cameroon, and strict control of economic flows. President Sako emphasized that Ambazonia's independence struggle is distinct from Cameroon's internal political dispute. In a further escalation, Tchiroma announced on Friday, November 21, as a national day of mourning for victims of the post-electoral crisis. He urged Cameroonians to observe a minute of silence at midday, called for religious prayer services, and instructed that businesses and administrative offices remain closed. He also pledged the creation of a support fund for affected families, accusing the current administration of having sworn in the Bible after stealing an election, while vowing to uphold what he described as the will of the people. President Paul Biya's government has not yet issued a response to Tchiroma's proclamation. Now, what are the implications? These developments expose widening fractures within French Cameroon's political elite and reaffirm Ambazonia's position as a separate political and diplomatic. And being diplomatic, analysts warn that with the opposition's growing assertiveness and Ambazonian's firm stance on sovereignty, the country could be entering a period of intensified political confrontation with implications for stability, governance, and regional security. So, Barrister Mbeseha, could Tchiroma's directives such as closing businesses and halting movements be seen as him overstepping his political authority? We get to see that prior to the election and post-election, he's been making bold claims, bold statements and declarations because he rightly believes, and then he's well supported by the people, that he is the will of the people. What are your thoughts? Don't you think he most probably, or he is, overstepping his political authority at this time?
No. I don't think Tchiroma is overstepping his authority at any time. Tchiroma is within his own authority. Full authority as the president-elect. Whether he's swimming or not, that's the guy the people chose. That's the guy that the people of Cameroon chose to be their president. With or without Ambazonia, we should think it was without Ambazonia, they chose him. He won the election. And if you win an election, it is your duty to rule. If a thief breaks into that electoral process and steals your victory in open daylight, he's a political armed robber. And so Tchiroma is within the context of Cameroon. He's perfectly right in what he's doing. Now let me then go down to analyze a bit. Let us start with his appointment of Alice Nkom as the spokesperson. Before we get to his appointment, I had said here before sometimes that the issue of Tchiroma is not simple. It's not as simple as Atanga and other political idiots will tell you over the world in Cameroon there. Well, that's Alice Nkom. She lives in Douala there. There's no bee guarding her. There's nothing. If you and me, if we went to Bamenda or to go and say, I'm the representative of Ambazonia, they will look for where you live and come and catch you. Lock you up. It will not kill you. You want to catch Alice Nkom. They are not doing it. Alice Nkom, that's the woman there. By every standard, she deserves respect. By age, she's very old. By education, she's a renowned lawyer. by stamina, she is one of them. And so, even you don't see Tchiroma, you see the caliber of people he appoints. They pose a challenge to the regime in place. Not a physical challenge, a moral challenge, a political challenge. Arresting her, which I think they will do later on, would put more spotlight on their criminality. And so they are not going to do it easily. If they try to do it, they have to think twice. Then go back to the orders President-elect he calls himself, Tchiroma, has issued. He has issued his orders. Among them, a day of mourning. Mourning for what? For those victims that have been killed, that were killed during the elections. We've not had a day of mourning in Cameroon for so many years. There was no day of mourning for the Maquisards. We can even talk about a day of mourning for the Ambazonians who have died in thousands. There was no day of mourning in 2018 when they killed and arrested so many people during the election that Maurice Kamto said he won. And so Tchiroma is taking steps, and politically very, very positive steps. But his orders asking that things should not move across the border from Ambazonia to Cameroon. I had the opportunity to address this particular issue last Tuesday. Yes, in this own context, in their mind, they think that Ambazonia is still part of their territory. In his mind, he thinks if he's the president, he's also the president of Ambazonia. But that's not where my take is. If Tchiroma says that goods should not move from Ambazonia, call it northwest, southwest, call it Anglophone zones, to Cameroon, to me, I would not have reacted the way the president did. I would have done it differently. Because to me, that shows that he recognizes that we have a separate boundary with him. He has not given the order that things should not move from Douala to Yaoundé, or from Bafoussam to Douala, from Garawa to Maroua. No. He has issued this thing specifically mentioning Ambazonia, call it Anglophones. Therefore, in effect, he recognizes that we have a separate boundary that can be secured. But what should he have done? Before that, before he even issued his order 3 days ago, last week, I remember we declared that we were closing our borders, which is normal. Countries close their borders when neighbors have problems. So our borders officially are closed. What does closure of borders mean? It means that things will not cross from us to them. Neither would they have things cross from them to us. And so, if I were the one, I would have simply said, Mr. Tchiroma, that's a good job, but order your border patrol to patrol the border and let nothing pass from Ambazonia to you. Because you have the border patrol, you know where the border is. So, when we declared our boundaries closed, we didn't seek his permission. Neither did we seek the permission of Paul Biya or anybody else in the world. We simply said our borders are closed. What is left to be sure that we enforce it. And therefore, if we have an ally in the Tchiroma, president-elect, we say that those borders should be closed, I would rather congratulate him. You can recognize that we have a boundary that we can close, that is asking us to close. What's his crime? He might not have thought this way. He thought that they were trying to say to his fellow Ambazonians, fellow Anglos, but no, technically he's recognizing our boundary, which are traceable, which are identifiable. And he's asking us, don't let your things cross here. I don't know what he meant by those things. Did he mean cocoyams, Gary, and so on? Or he meant that we could export some soldiers to come and help Paul here fight him. I don't know. But that's how, to me, I look at it. Tchiroma, up to this point, it is more than a month. It was 12th of October they had elections. We're 28 today, more than a month. Yaoundé is not in peace. Yaoundé, to say it in the local parlance, they are peeing in their pants. They are frightened through Tchiroma. I saw Tanganji rumbling up there. How many people did he arrest? He was instead struggling to release the people they arrested. Even excuse the word were minors who under parental care. He was struggling to release them. Why? Because Tchiroma had given an order to release everybody on a specific date by then. Yeah, it might be they didn't release all, but when you venture in the north, you release everybody, at least the one we could see. So what was he? Why was he doing that? They are cowed. They have recognized themselves that, you say, good thieves, clever thieves steal in the night. But poor thieves, stupid ones, do armed robbery in the daylight because they will see you. There's no way you escape. If you come and break somebody's store in the daylight, like the break into election daylight, they will see you. You cannot longer hide. And so that's my take about it. I might be wrong, but that's my take about it. Over you.
Amazing. It's good to hear your thoughts regarding this report with Issa Tchiroma, and then highlighting also President's reaction to that. All right, moving on, and we still have this report about Issa Tchiroma and the penalty that has been offered to him by Atanga. A video clip circulating widely on social platforms shows French Cameroon's Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanga, delivering a forceful warning to Issa Tchiroma Bakari, promising that those he called instigators of unrest will face the full weight of the law. In the footage, Atanga's tone is uncompromising, an official reiterating a familiar line from a government facing sustained public anger. The clip has been shared and reposted across Facebook and YouTube, drawing sharp reactions from citizens and commentators. At face level, the minister's words are a clear statement of intent from the administration. Public dissent, the government says, will be met with punitive action. Yet, viewed in context, the declaration reads less like law enforcement than a display of political theater. Atanga's threat, issued while repeatedly affirming Paul Biya as the president, exposed an extraordinary dissonance. He demands obedience to a mandate that a large swath of the population openly rejects. The optics are jarring. A senior official threatens punishment for a man and a movement that many French Cameroonians regard as challenging what they perceive to be a stolen mandate. The message is not only punitive, it is defensive. Now, there is an irony that runs through the footage. The minister speaks of restoring order while embodying the very impunity and lawlessness many citizens point to as the root of their grievances. Accusations of election manipulation, economic mismanagement, and erosion of public institutions have long shadowed the former administrative regime. Yes, the response offered on camera is the old playbook of threats and intimidation rather than accountability and dialogue. To observers, this approach underscores a deeper problem. When state actors prioritize coercion over reconciliation, they risk deepening the legitimacy gap rather than closing it. Atanga's language also signals political calculation. By framing Tchiroma as an instigator of violence and disorder, the administration seeks to criminalize dissent and recast a political contest as a security problem, a tactic with practical consequences. Labeling opponents as criminals legitimizes arrests, detentions, and heavy-handed measures that further restrict civic space. Those who watch the clip see not only a threat to one man, but a warning shot to any citizen considering public protest. This contributes to a climate of fear and raises questions about proportionality, human rights, and the rule of law. But threats can also backfire. In an era of smartphones and social media, attempts to silence or intimidate often amplify the very voices they seek to suppress. We see that the widespread sharing of Atanga's remarks and the public debates they have sparked demonstrates that coercion no longer guarantees control of the narrative. For many French Cameroonians, the minister's vow will be read as confirmation of a foreign-aligned, oligarchic protection of power rather than a legitimate act of governance. The more officials insist on coercion without transparency, the more they deepen the perception that the state answers to itself rather than to the people. In short, the video of Atanga's threat is less a momentary outburst than a revealing snapshot of a political system at odds with its citizens. It highlights an administration that, when confronted by claims of illegitimacy, doubles down on authority through intimidation, even as that very posture feeds public distrust. Whether the state chooses force or reform will determine if these tensions escalate or if a pathway to reconciliation can be found. Barrister Mbeseha, from a legal standpoint, can a minister like Atanga legitimately threaten punitive action in defense of a presidential mandate? Issa Tchiroma, whose legitimacy is publicly disputed. Paul Biya. What does the law say about enforcing authority that a significant portion of the population rejects? We see that in the post-election violence. What do you have to say?
I think Atanga in particular looks like somebody who's possessed. Because this is a man who looks strong. He is surrounded by those people wearing khaki shirts and berets, each of who enjoys the presidential decree. Each of who, according to them, has the power to arrest and lock you for 15 days renewable. That is 30 days enough. Then that's where his power looks great. He can gesticulate there. He can masturbate there. But those things have no meaning. Everybody knows who Atanga is. Sooner or later, this thing will end. Shall there be consequences? There will be consequences. You can quote me. And we'll be the first people to face the consequence of what that guy is doing. Atanga will be number one. Atanga is a criminal. He came to that office from prison. But he's more a criminal today than he was when he came to the office of the minister. Why? This Atanga who is sitting there, a minister, who has committed political genocide. That's the first ministry in the world that I know, not only Cameroon, who pirates his own website, the website of his own ministry, with the sole purpose of eliminating a presidential candidate. Not just the presidential candidate eliminated because he comes from a particular region. He comes from the West. And as a result of what Atanga did, we're not accusing him. He admitted, he said his website was pirated. But he never told us who pirated it. As a result of his action, people have died. People have died because of that thing. People are in prison. So that is political genocide, because that is crimes orchestrated because of the origin of the candidate. Done by who? Done by Atanga, as per his own words, not me saying it. So can this impunity go forever? No. Sooner or later, like it or not, the regime of Paul Biya will end. The CPDM will one day, not too long from now, be in the opposition. And if Atanga can run to go and hide, that will be better for him. But I wonder where he can find a hiding place, because the ICC is watching him, and the ICC has very few places where he can hide if they indict you, if you're indicted. And so Atanga again can gesticulate the way he does. He cannot do more than that. He's just an empty, active player. I don't see other people doing like him in the regime. The people who even matter in the Bulu regime, they don't behave like Atanga. So this man behaves like somebody who is off senses. But I think he's a normal man. He has done everything that has never been done anywhere else in politics. Again, they are political armed robbers. And he's the chief armed robber. He is the guy who has sponsored people to kill others in the streets of Bamina and Abuja. Not hiding it, he called them the Atanga boys. Can this man survive for so long? He could. He could. If he dies. Because when the ICC puts you on their own vision Only death will take you away from them. If he dies now, which we don't pray that he should die, he's still very young, he should go back to jail. He should feel the pains of being in the opposition. He should go back and continue his job in the new prison in Douala. And so Atanga is postulating for nothing. If this politics, Issa Tchiroma knows it 10 times more than him. The first time he got to government was 2018, even though he had been in the security. Atanga Tchiroma has been in politics actively since the 1990s. So politically, he is not matched to Issa Tchiroma. What penalty is he talking about? Does Atanga have the right to indict anybody? No. No, you are not the Minister of Justice. You are not the Chief of Police. Neither are you the Chief of the Gendarmerie that investigate crimes and bring people to book. And so you just talk anything. That's why I call it gesticulation. That's why I call it he's masturbating. Because he doesn't seem to know what he's talking. He's the one who, remember, that he invented the voices in the bushes. He's the one who invented that the government will give money to go and bury the bereaved. It looks funny. And so, I mean, there's something so much to say about this gentleman guy. But he's not alone, though. He has people who are blowing him behind like a football match, who are pumping him, who are blowing him to become bigger. But sooner or later, like a balloon, he's going to explode. He's going to get bursts. And what will be left of him will be a carcass. And so he cannot do anything to Tchiroma. Not the Issa Tchiroma that we know. Issa Tchiroma today, as we speak, is bigger than Atanga. Issa Tchiroma, as we speak today politically, is bigger than Cameroun. The world is watching and watching closely what they will do or attempt to do to Issa Tchiroma. Let him try. We're not preventing them. But I'm sure they're very, very cautious. Because after all, they would have gone and raided his house in Garoua. They would have arrested his parents, his wife, and everybody that they could find. If that guy were Ambazonia, if that guy will come to, they've not done it. They go around the security around his hand, they come back. And then they threaten he will get the justice. What justice did he make? Then bring him to jail. If the jail itself will not explode. And so, Atanga again. I don't like to quote him. Because I hear it's an Ambazonian. But I doubt. But if it's an Ambazonian, then he should be one of the dullest Ambazonians I've ever heard. I heard he went to second-hand Mancom, which is one of the renowned colleges we have. And if after the education in Sacred Heart, you can still talk about the voices in the bushes. You can still talk about helping to bury the bereaved. Then we must imagine what type of person he is, intellectually or otherwise. That's not matter we should bother ourselves with it. That man who can break a bank in the plain daylight with cutlass and a spear. He comes to the bank in the open daylight with an axe. He's sitting in a poem. You think that people are not listening to him? They will listen. They will catch you right there. So again, for him, we should follow him. We should do the best. But you have very little time to survive. You have very little space to hide. For every bad thing has to come to an end. Just like any good thing comes to an end. There's a day, not too long from now, I've said, that the Paul Biya regime stolen victory will end. That the CPDM masquerades will end. Like it or not. Because no dictatorship has ever lasted forever in the world. None. They always come and end. So yours will not be different. But intellectuals, if they want, going to look for their hiding spaces, for where they will dive into the ocean and hide if it is possible. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Mbeseha. I would like to bring this report to your attention. Just recently, a new development, Nnamdi Kanu has just been sentenced to life imprisonment. I want to believe you've come across that report already. Now, do you see any similarity with that as regarding what is happening right here in French Cameroun?
No. There's nothing similar. I saw the Nnamdi Kanu story that he has been sentenced. Yeah, he has been sentenced. I don't see anything similar to what happened in Southern Cameroon. Nnamdi Kanu is fighting for his Republic of Ambazonia. For the Republic of Biafra. Where right or wrong? I saw why he was sentenced. He's put before the Supreme Court for a trial. Unlike our people in Yaoundé, he's given the opportunity to defend himself, to get lawyers to defend himself. He says, I will defend myself. How many people, ordinary people, go to defend themselves in the Supreme Court? How many? He was given the opportunity. And I saw that judgment of the court there. They said, well, you forfeited the right to defend yourself. You were given a right to defend yourself, you forfeited it. So what will we do? There's nothing similar to what is going on in Cameroon. There's nothing similar in the two cases. Ambazonian case is just that one. It's so different. The Biafra case is so different, totally different. Nothing similar to compare. And so there are two different parameters, two different things entirely. I cannot be in a position to judge whether he was right to be charged or not. They have, at least in Nigeria, they follow the law. There's some law that they follow there, as compared to the jungle where we find people in Cameroon. The Supreme Court where he's sentenced, as I'm told, it's a civilian court. He has never been a military guy. The court where our Ambazonians are sentenced to death, to life imprisonment, are military courts, where none of them has ever been in the military. So they are not two similar things. Why we sympathize with them? If they think they want the independence, they can fight for it. But there's nothing to compare between Nnamdi, Kanu, and Ambazonia. Absolutely not comparison. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Mbeseha. Thank you for the thoughts, the analysis, and the perspectives you've brought to tonight's show and the report we've been having recently. Thank you so much. This is where we'll let you go and we'll head over to the rest of the news.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, with this, we head on to the rest of the news from Africa and across the globe. Tonight, Operation Dudula activists have intensified efforts to block undocumented migrants from accessing public health services in South Africa, escalating tensions in a country where anti-immigrant sentiment has erupted repeatedly in recent years. At clinics across Gauteng, members of the group arrive in military-style clothing and position themselves at entrances demanding identity documents from anyone seeking care. Those unable to produce South African papers are turned away and instructed to seek treatment at private facilities where services are not free. The campaign has drawn legal and political condemnation. The Johannesburg High Court has ruled the group's actions unlawful, and the national government maintains that South African law guarantees access to health care for all, regardless of nationality or documentation status. Despite these rulings, Operation Dudula's influence continues to grow, particularly in communities frustrated by the economic hardship and competition that has been ongoing with the public services. The confrontation at healthcare facilities marks the latest flashpoint in a broader national debate over migration, public resources, and social cohesion. Meanwhile, this is the report still in Africa. Tension and cautious optimism are building in Guinea-Bissau as the country approaches what is shaping up to be one of its most contentious presidential elections in the multi-party era. President Umaru Sissoco Embalo is pursuing a second term in Sunday's vote after a turbulent 5 years marked by political instability and recurring claims of attempted coups. A victory would make Embalo the first incumbent to win re-election since independence more than 50 years ago. However, debate over the length of his current mandate has intensified divisions. Opposition groups insist his term ended in February, while the Supreme Court has ruled that it maintains valid until September. The decision to bring the election forward from November 30th has added to the political uncertainty, heightening tensions as the country prepares to go to the polls. Coming in just tonight, an Abuja court has sentenced IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu to life imprisonment, 20-year and 5 years imprisonment for different counts. The judge also said he must be kept in protective custody with no devices at his proposal. We will definitely bring you details in our subsequent bulletins. Now, with this, we'll head over to the news across the globe. Johannesburg's night sky lit up with bold messages of urgency and protest on Wednesday as South Africa prepared to host the first G20 summit ever held on African soil. Activists and artists used high-rise buildings as massive illuminated canvases, projecting striking posters and illustrations to demand action on issues they say what leaders have neglected for too long. From climate accountability and debt relief to women's rights and global inequality. The visual campaign was a collaboration between South African artists and members of the Goslow Actions team who sought to capture international attention on the eve of the high-stakes gathering. Their messages echoed mounting global frustrations that developing nations continue to suffer most from climate disasters and crushing debt, while wealthier countries fall short of financial commitment. Now, see that United Nations Trade Chief Rebecca Greenspan underscored the severity of the debt crisis, noting that 3.3 billion people last year lived in countries spending more on interest payments than on essential services like health or education. The situation, activists say, leaves little room for development or resilience in the face of escalating climate shocks. Skilled Lane Modi, the director of the African Climate Foundation's New Economy Hub, argued that debt relief must be a first priority. The debt is highly and unfairly priced, and it is also killing our chances at development, he said, adding that global leaders must show clarity of voice and courage to secure nations against hunger, climate catastrophe, and to guarantee the dignity of development. South Africa's summit host has signaled its intention to center the concerns of poorer nations. Over the two-day meeting beginning Saturday, leaders and top diplomats from more than 40 countries alongside institutions like the United Nations, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and World Trade Organization are expected to confront long-standing divides over climate financing, disaster response, and global economic reform. The issue of climate finance in particular has repeatedly exposed tensions between rich and poor countries at major international summits. Although developed nations agreed at last year's UN climate conference to mobilize at least $300 billion per year by 2035 to help vulnerable communities and countries cope with climate impact. Independent experts say the true need is far greater, as much as $1 trillion annually by 2030. Now, this weekend summit will take place without one of the world's biggest emitters, the United States, under President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump is boycotting the G20 summit and the gathering, citing widely discredited claims that South Africa is violently persecuting its white Afrikaner minority. The absence is expected to cast a shadow over negotiations already marked by deep mistrust and competing priorities. As activists continue to project their urgent messages across social media across Johannesburg, pressure is mounting on global leaders to deliver tangible results and commitment, not only for the sake of the countries most affected by climate change and economic instability, but for the credibility of the G20 itself. Well, this is the report we're having, and with that, we've come to the end of Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. But before we go, a recap of the prime headlines. Saw that Ambazonian violence intensifies. Baptist pastor kidnapped in Jakiri as clergy face rising threat. Tonight we also saw Project Z movement urges Pope not to legitimize disputed election in French Cameroun. Also tonight, Cameroun faces political upheaval as Tchiroma declares national mourning. Ambazonia rejects authority. Tonight, we took a look at Atanga Vows penalty for Issa Tchiroma. And on African scene tonight, we saw that Operation Dudula escalates anti-migrant campaign at South African public clinics. Tonight also, news across the globe. Activists light up Johannesburg as South Africa urges global action ahead of historic G20 summit. And that is all on Undaunted tonight, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted newsroom, we say thank you for joining. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.